This podcast explores the photographer Ernst Haas and his photograph, Homecoming Prisoner, from 1948. The photograph is linked on the podcast page. Through visual analysis and critical thinking, we will unearth one of the stories behind this photograph. We start by diving into Ernst Haas's life and career. Then we will analyze the story and meaning behind this famous and provocative photograph of a lone soldier returning home from war. Homecoming Prisoner is significant and unique because of its melancholic undertones and dynamic physical features. It tells a political story about European society and its acceptance of war veterans after World War II. We will question the documentary value of this image, and we will talk about the state of photography as a profession after the Second World War.
Hello everyone, my name is Eska and I'm here with my classmate Wyatt to explore the work of Ernst Haas and his photograph titled Homecoming Prisoner taken in 1948. In discussing this photograph, we will also think about the power of documentary photography holds and how it can be used to enact social and political change. Photographs, like words, are a form of communication. As the old saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that rings true especially for photographs like those of Ernst Haas.
First, let's get into talking about the man behind the camera. Ernst Haas was an Austrian-American photographer who was born in Vienna in 1921. A renowned photojournalist who documented the residual repercussions of the Second World War, Haas was raised in the culturally and artistically rich environment of Vienna, Austria. Brought up by parents who valued his education in the arts, Haas developed a unique appreciation for representative depictions that develop a conversation and spark transformative societal ideas. Haas is known for pioneering color photography, among many other important photographic technologies and discoveries. Fueled by a desire to show the world the effects of war and how various nations and communities were rebuilding and coping, photographers like Ernst Haas took to the streets in search of opportunities to display the consequences of war. This endeavor not only influenced post-war attitudes and ideologies, but it changed the entire photography profession.
Taken before he began to develop his strategies of color photography, Haas's initial work on Austrian prisoners returning home after World War II led to commissions by prestigious magazines including Life and Vogue, as well as an induction into Magnum. Over the course of his 40-year career, Haas produced photographs that brought viewers a deeper emotional understanding of the impacts of strife and war. Because his own life was altered and affected by war, he felt empowered to document its effects on the greater European community. Haas's photographs, like Homecoming Prisoner, enact powerful political and sociological conversations about violence and mental health.
The photograph we are exploring today depicts a lone man standing on the edge of a cobblestone street. Taking up nearly the entire frame of the picture, the focus is on his body position and his belongings, which seem to include only the clothes on his back and his backpack. He stands on the sidewalk, utilizing crutches to support himself while balancing on one leg. We can presume he lost his other leg in war, and after the eye finds the man and sees the lack of left leg, you see a prosthetic leg sticking out of his canvas backpack. The prosthetic sits at the center of the photograph. The wind blows his trench coat into the absent space that his left leg should be. This is the factor that reveals how he has lost not only his lower leg, but his left leg in its entirety.
It is interesting how it is not only his leg, but also his head that attracts our attention. The soldier's head is turned to the right, looking, waiting, and seemingly longing for something. We cannot see his face, but his disheveled hair, coupled with the lack of visually seeing his face, leaves viewers imagining that he could be waiting for something on the street. Is he waiting for a taxi? Is he waiting for a friend? Is he simply stranded on this street with no plan of where to go next? The photograph is filled with doubt and speculation, and this is brought about through the lack of facial expression. In other words, Haas's Homecoming Prisoner is a documentary photograph that functions as a picture of a person without a picture of a face. Taking this into account, we must assume that Haas made the intentional decision to photograph the soldier from behind, this hiding his facial expression and allowing the viewer to draw their own conclusions from the soldier's body position, his positions, and his surroundings.
As we learned from the title of the photograph, the subject is coming home from World War II. Returning to Vienna, Austria, the soldier is coming home to a place that may look and feel drastically different from what he knew before the war. In his book, The Politics of Retribution in Europe, World War II and Its Aftermath, Tony Judt writes that, quote, massive upheaval and collapse within the capitalist economy brought an end to the stability of 19th century life and introduced radical changes in social relations, end quote. For our faceless prisoner, he is most likely coming home to a place that is socially, economically, and even culturally changed.
Judt also writes that, quote, violence in every sphere became endemic. The consequences of battle are on vivid display in this photograph. This is visualized through the seemingly decrepit body that the man hangs over his crutches, and his very aura is that of loss and pain. Austria, being in the middle of Europe, had a first-hand view of World War II. Austria declared their independence from Nazi Germany in 1945, once the war had ended, but the scars of battle were still very evident in not only the land and cities of Austria, but the people as well. The participants of this gruesome war returned to their homes battered and mutilated, like the soldiers in Haas's famous photograph. In her book, The War in Their Minds, German Soldiers and Their Violent Pasts in West Germany, Svenja Gulterman writes that, quote, the immediate post-war reality offered hardly any orientation, end quote. She also makes the note of the fact that, after the war, quote, the external signs of social destruction, dissolution were obvious and widely known, end quote. For the subject of Haas's image, this was the brutal reality that he was met with upon arrival in Vienna. Gulterman reminds us that, quote, millions of families were torn apart or destroyed, end quote. And this sadness is conveyed not only through words in Gulterman's book, but through documentary photographs.
This photograph is a testament to the power of the documentary. Homecoming Prisoner showcases Ernst Haas's skills in making a documentary photograph, as that is what this picture truly is, documentary. It is both a work of art and a message designed to inscribe this soldier and his tribulations into history to spark a broader conversation. Haas, when making this photograph, must have taken many factors into consideration, such as the wind, angle, and the soldier's posture and position. Encapsulating the elements in the background enhances the quality and feel of the photograph, as the tree, buildings, and steeple contribute a sense of depth to the photograph.
Wow, that's a lot to process, but I think you made some great points in there about the value of documentary and what kind of world the soldier was returning home to after his imprisonment and fighting. There is, in this photograph, a question of its truth. How do we know what side this soldier was on during the war? Could this soldier be a released Nazi returning home to his family? The truth value of a documentary photograph must always be taken into account when decoding the photographic messages and working to understand their historical context. The lack of words and facial expressions in this photo make it hard to draw conclusions about the photograph, so we as viewers must look at the photograph through the intention of the photographer. Photographer's intention is often thought of as not as important. As art, it can be perceived differently by everyone regardless of its original intention. But Ernst Haas must have made this picture with the intention of sending a clear message about veterans and the state of Europe after the Second World War.
Haas's photograph, while not disrespecting the soldier in any way, portrays him in a non-traditional way. As we think back through documentary history of art and photographs, much of the media was structured around framing soldiers as heroic, valiant, strong, and unwavering. This image, on the other hand, portrays a depressing reality that the toils of war bestow upon prisoners and soldiers.
Another aspect of photography is that of the relationship between the photographer and their subject. In this case, Haas has positioned himself and his camera behind his unnamed subject, and the viewers can almost feel as though they are looking without permission. The photograph seems to almost be a glimpse into a private world, so it is almost uncomfortable. One can only wonder what the interaction was between Ernst Haas and this homecoming prisoner of war. How did Haas convince the soldier to participate in this photograph? Was it the subject who suggested that the photo should be taken, or did he even know that Haas was taking the picture of him in the first place? This fragile and important relationship between photographer and image subject would have applied greatly to the situation in Haas's famous photograph here, as photographing a seemingly debilitated man who has been through so much would have been emotionally jarring, to say the least.
Asking questions like these and thinking about the situation at hand while creating a photograph is crucial to understanding the meaning behind documentary photographs and their messages. Also, while it is important to consider the intended message of the photograph, we can also come to terms with the fact that the intention behind the document does not always correlate with the impact that the photograph produces.
Once again, we return to the concept of the documentary. There is, as is obvious from a single glance at this entrapping image, a serious artistic component to the photograph. The absence of color, artistic elements like the tree and steeple in the background, and many other factors make this pleasing and engrossing image to view. All this being said, this is a documentary photograph, and a documentary photograph is a record of something. It is a photographic transcript of history. After World War II, the photography industry surged.
When one looks at this photograph, human instinct kicks in and empathy is a natural emotion that arises. Personally, when I look at the photograph, I put myself in the shoes, or shoe, of the individual in the photograph. When growing up listening to stories, many of us hear about those doing bigger, better, and different things than we are. Humans often strive to be something they are not. I personally see photographs as a lens into the life of someone different than myself in one certain moment. What about the soldier in the photograph and his surroundings and belongings are letting viewers get closer to a point where they can empathize with him? I want to know more. Looking at the photograph draws me in and my curious nature wants answers. This need for answers can lead to assumptions which everyone unconsciously makes with their own previous schema and biases. Everyone experiences art and documentary photography from a different perspective.
That's really interesting to think about, how people come at art with their own background already ingrained. I like how you bring that up in a conversation about this particular photograph, as it is very emotionally provocative. We are unaware of the soldier's name and age, as well as other attributes about this mysterious man in the photo. Having no face available for the viewer gives the man a sense of mystery, and the viewer will never know what he truly looks like. On the other hand, Haas is also exposing the man in the photograph by his utilization of the camera. We as viewers will never know the dynamic between Haas and this man in the photograph. Did the man know how and to what extent the photo was going to be used? Would the soldier have changed his pose if he had known the photograph would have become a powerful anti-war statement in the future? Is the reality and purity of capturing a scene undisturbed by the awareness of the camera not the beauty of documentary photography in the first place?
One of the main messages that Haas's homecoming prisoner conveys is that of social and mental health for veterans. In this case, the photographed soldier is presumably an Allied forces prisoner of war who is returning to his home in Vienna, Austria. Haas made a conscious decision to remove all color from the photograph and not show the man's face, and these intentional aspects of the image create a sense of depression and isolation. As viewers, we can assume that these emotional undertones were created by Haas in order to spark a conversation about veterans' mental health and their life after serving their countries. This is where the power of documentary photography lies. Photographs, like rhetoric, convey information and emotions to consumers about issues such as the ones Haas has highlighted with Homecoming Prisoner.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. We've enjoyed talking about Ernst Haas and his famous photograph, and we hope you listen to more podcasts in the Bates Museum of Art collection.